Alright guys, y'all know I'm a huge Marvel fan, except when it comes to Batman. I'm just a huge Batman fan, and that's because Bruce Wayne is super cool, super mysterious, and arguably one of the smartest superheroes out there. But behind every great super dude is a long, winding trail of super babes, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Batman / Bruce Wayne has had so many girlfriends it's hard to keep track. Just a quick reminder, the DC universe is extremely vast, so this list probably won't cover absolutely everything that exists within, but I'm gonna do my best to break it all down for you. I'm Whitney Van Lanningham, and these are Batman's comic book hookups. Before Batman became Batman, he was just a kid named Bruce Wayne with two perfectly alive parents and a bunch of money in Wayne Manor. That's when he meets Dawn Golden. Her dad is a crazy cult leader, but he happens to do business with Thomas Wayne, so Dawn ends up over at Bruce's house one day. They go outside to play, and Dawn steals his kite and releases it into the sky. Dick move, and the two of them get into a fight. When Bruce tackles her and looks into her eyes, he starts to think that maybe she might not be so bad after all. They end up dating in college for a little while, but she leaves Bruce and breaks his heart. On her father's deathbed, he tells her that her greater purpose was actually letting him sacrifice her to some demon god so that he could become Hell's Lord on Earth. Dawn is like, fuck that, and escapes. She's later kidnapped by the Penguin, and Batman launches an investigation to find her. Unfortunately, after he frees her, they're attacked by an army of demons who drag Dawn into the sewers beneath Gotham, where her father tries to kill her again. Bruce doesn't make it in time to save her, but is still able to help her soul go peacefully to the afterlife. But okay, let's really start this off with the golden age of Batman. Bruce Wayne's first love was Julie Madison. First of all, she looks super hot in lingerie, and second of all, she was completely convinced that Bruce Wayne's lazy, rich playboy alter ego was all that he would ever be. Julie was the kind of girl who really wanted Batman to step it up and make something of himself, but ultimately, she was totally over this relationship when she thought she realized that he would never amount to anything besides being a spoiled rich kid. Julie broke off their engagement and moved to Hollywood to start her life over as an actress. They remained on good terms though, so who knows what'll happen in the future. Next up, we've got Vicki Vale. Vicki was a smart, badass babe because she wasn't putting up with this whole Batman and Bruce Wayne aren't the same person thing. Basically, Vicki was created as the Batman version of Superman's Lois Lane, but let's be real. In terms of the way that he treated her was the most gaslighty bullshit I've ever seen. Every time she tried to talk to him about how he might, be Batman, he'd be like, oh shit, no way, I'm not Batman, I'm just Bruce. Batman is that other guy. I hear he's great though, and super hot, right? But Vicki is a photojournalist and a real tough cookie, and at one point she even threatens to expose Bruce Wayne as Batman. In the end, she decides not to expose his secrets, and the two become allies, which is really great for Batman. Not so great for her career. Bruce also dated Linda Page, who is a fellow socialite. Unlike most of the spoiled rich kids, however, Linda actually helped volunteer as a nurse for the elderly. She and Batman date for a few issues, but eventually break up because of Batman's double life. After that, Kathy King came onto the scene. Kathy was another rich socialite with an added fun of being a former circus carny, so that's cool. She took it upon herself to don the Batwoman costume, which some speculate was because she wanted to get a little closer to Batman. But ultimately, he was too worried about what might happen to her if she were to get hurt. That didn't stop her though, and she kept operating as Batwoman while her niece Betty helped out Gotham as Batgirl. Then that whole thing with Dick Grayson happened, and then she realized that Batman was a completely different person, and then she decided to hang up her super suit and return to civilian life, so nothing ever really came out of their relationship. Now let's move on to the Silver Age. Here we find Batman married to Catwoman, a badass babe who's half villain, half hero, and 100% sexy. The two have a daughter who grows up to be Huntress, and Selina seems to be reformed for a little while. Selina Kyle had a really rough life. Her mom killed herself, her dad drank himself to death, and she even worked as a prostitute in Gotham for a little while. But like Batman has done for so many of us, he eventually inspired Catwoman to become a superhero herself. For Batman, Catwoman was the ultimate gray area in his black and white good versus evil life. Honestly, that's probably why he found her so attractive. In the Bronze Age, we're introduced to Silver St. Cloud. She's a blonde bombshell socialite, shocker, and shares a brief romance with Bruce Wayne. That is until she figures out that he's the Batman. Hot and smart. She bails on that whole mess because she realizes very early on that being the Cape Crusader's girlfriend would probably suck balls. During this time, the supervillain Nocturna, aka Natalia Knight, figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman and falls in love with both of them. After a battle, she tells Batman everything she knows about him and asks him to marry her. Batman obviously says no, and Talia ends up getting custody of Jason Todd. He also kissed Julia Pennyworth, who actually ended up being Alfred's biological daughter. She kind of forces him into the kiss, and Batman turns her down after she tries to tell him her feelings for him. The funny part is, Alfred decides to set Julia up on a date with Bruce Wayne, and the two of them actually kind of hit it off until Julia decides that Bruce is just a dumb, spoiled millionaire. I think we're all caught up to the modern age, right? God, I hope so. Batman's next main squeeze was Talia Al Ghul, who was actually introduced for the first time in 1971, but the two didn't get really hot and heavy until the 80s. When they first meet, she's already pretty devoted to Batman and even saves his life when her father tries to have him killed. Talia has some serious daddy issues. Okay, for example, have you ever heard of the song by Nirvana, Been a Son? Of course you haven't, because nobody likes that album Incesticide except for me. Unless you do, in which case, tight. Anyways, Been a Son is a song about how some men believe that women shouldn't exist, or that they'd be better off if they were just men. That's what Talia's dad was like. Ra's al Ghul knew how smart and talented his daughter was, but refused to love her to his full capacity because she wasn't a boy. Gross. Batman really loved Talia, but he was a little creeped out by the fact that she was super okay with murdering people. He didn't exactly want to be on her bad side because being with her seemed to make her happy, but she kept hanging out with her dad and it was really weird. Batman and Ra's kept fighting, and Batman kept killing Ra's, and Ra's kept killing Batman, but every single time Talia would bring the one who had died back to life. It was really fucking weird, man. Batman finally kills her dad, but then he's like, "Dude, I can't date you anymore, this was awful," and gives her a goodbye kiss. That doesn't last long though, because surprise, Ra's isn't dead. Talia kidnaps Batman and takes him onto her dad's yacht like a douchebag, and her dad performs a forced marriage ceremony on them. At this point, Batman is like, what the fuck, and only manages to get out of the marriage by refusing to consummate it. Oddly enough, that wasn't enough of a deterrent for Batman, because when Talia returns to Gotham a little while later, the two develop a working romantic relationship where they travel the world together, solving mysteries and fighting crimes. Eventually, Talia and Batman have a son named Damian, who is raised by the League of Assassins. Damian sounds like he kinda sucks. He's a spoiled brat and he's totally murdery, and Talia ends up cloning him and then abandoning him. She eventually puts a bounty on his head, and after learning that Batman survived his assumed death, she swears Batman her mortal enemy. When Alfred decides that Bruce needs to get back into his playboy party lifestyle, Bruce meets Jezebel Jet at an art gallery in London. It's important to note that all of this was taking place during the time that Talia Al Ghul was spying on Batman, still hoping that she and Bruce and Damian could be a real family. At first, Jezebel isn't really interested in being one of the Wayne girls, but she later joins him on a ski trip. She sees all of his bruises and is like, "What are those?" And he's like, I like dangerous sports." And she's like what? And he's like, "Parkour? Nah, I'm just fucking with you." But he does tell her that he's into dangerous sports to throw her off the bat scent. They almost break up, but Jezebel is taken hostage and ultimately figures out that Bruce Wayne is Batman. He ends up giving her a tour of the Batcave, which is pretty cool, but not long after, her plane is hijacked and Talia beheads her. In Batman Year 2, we find Batman dating Rachel Caspian. Bruce falls in love with Rachel and is planning to quit his crime-fighting career to marry her, but she finds out that her father is an evil man and decides to pay for his sins by becoming a nun. Sucks for Batman. In 1992, Bruce Wayne falls in love with his doctor, Chandra Kinsolving. But before he could confess his feelings to her, Bane cripples him again, and Chandra is kidnapped by her evil half-brother. He ends up damaging her mind so much that she regresses to childhood. This is definitely one of the sadder storylines in Batman's love life. Next, Bruce Wayne starts dating a local radio host, Vesper Fairchild. However, a huge earthquake hits Gotham and she decides to leave No Man's Land. She immediately regrets this decision, heads back to Gotham, where she repairs her relationship with Batman, and Batman tries to repair the city. Vesper is eventually shot and killed by David Kane under instruction of Lex Luthor, and Bruce decides to take a little hiatus from being the Batman. After that, Sasha Bordeaux is hired to be Bruce Wayne's bodyguard. Surprise! She eventually finds out that he's Batman too, and knowing that he can't ever fire her, he decides to train her as his apprentice. His whole approach to hanging out with her is very hands-off and cold, and he even insists on having her around his other girlfriends. She falls madly in love with him, but the two of them are framed for Vesper's murder, and Sasha is wounded badly in prison. The government agency Checkmate fakes her death and puts her back together again, but she has to agree to work for them. Batman finds out and starts fucking up Checkmate operations all over town until they agree to let Sasha meet up with him. Batman confesses that he loves her too, but Sasha tells him to just let her go. At the beginning of his career as the Dark Knight, Bruce meets a museum curator named Lorna Shore. He instantly falls in love with her and even starts feeling the same kind of warmth and comfort he used to feel while his parents were alive. Unfortunately, after a tangle with the Joker, he decides that he doesn't want to bring a civilian into his crazy lifestyle, and the two break up. Honorable mention goes to Mallory Moxon, Black Canary, Jillian Maxwell, Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, and Zatanna. Batman only made out with these gals a couple of times, or their romance was only speculative, but they still deserve a little shout out. I also want to holla at my girls Rachel Dawes, Barbara Gordon, Chase Meridian, Lois Lane, and Andrea Beaumont for being Batty's most bangin' on-screen babes. These girls were cool as hell, but we'll save them for a later list of Batman's movie and TV hookups. Like and subscribe to Obsev if you want to hear more about superheroes, and if you like this list of Batman's girlfriends, then you're gonna love me.